Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The 3 Down Greencast is brought to you by the Pile O'Bones Brewing Company. Home delivery available in Regina at sassbeerdelivery.ca. Welcome to the 3 Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only balloon podcast.
And not in that weird way, because I know that's a fetish that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, you can find a fetish for anything if you really want to.
It's true, but I've seen videos on the balloon one, not like those.
You've
kind
seen
of
videos.
Yeah. Not those.
Whatever
kind.
floats your boat.
Hey man, it's just I've seen it, I've heard of it. I think there was a Vice documentary on it. It's not like I'm going to the two-tone logo site and dialing up balloons.
No, I guess not. As usual, Joel Gasson with John, the returning John Fraser.
Yes.
As last week you were all, family and whatever.
Well, in fairness, it was a long road trip combined with a pretty good 3 or 4 day hangover, right? So, on the way down there, now imagine this, Joel, because this is hell for some people. A fully loaded Toyota Sienna with all portable coolers and food and suitcases and everything, and 3 children under the age of 6. On the way down there, it was fine. The stops lined up. Everything was good. On the way back, working on a 4-day hangover and an ungodly amount of caffeine, it was not so good. Maya needed to stop out of rotation when the rest of the stops needed to happen, and it was just a very, very long day. So I was very glad in advance that I had said, you should call in the more handsome and talented Dan Plaster, because I would have just been, you probably would have heard me just using my reflexes and turn around and scream at my kids to shut the F up and no, we're not there yet.
Fair, I guess. I mean, there was the chance that maybe I just wasn't going to let you back on the show because the numbers were way up last week, but that could be in part because the Riders shit the bed again and lost again to Calgary, and the sky appears to be falling. So,
remember the old Tim and Sid show when they'd have the panic button and they'd hit it? I think that's what this episode is. But before I diverted this episode about balloon fetish stuff, I want you to explain the balloon podcast because this shit is fire.
Yes, so this came across my Twitter feed. I don't remember who originally tweeted it into it. But apparently the Balloon World Cup was last week. And not like, hot air balloon or, blowing balloons or balloon animals or anything like that. No, literally the game that we all thought was just kind of like a thing kids did for fun, and I guess some adults, is apparently like an actual real competition where you try to bounce the balloon around without it hitting the ground. So there's an actual real World Cup for this.
Yes!
And it looks like Germany and Peru were in, I believe this was the final that I saw on Twitter.
It was amazing. And to put it into context, it's in a glass Hell in the Cell setup.
Yes.
So you can see through it, but they don't have the thing I love most about this is they didn't do competitive tag where it's all cyberpunk and cool and stuff. They literally threw down some couches. There's a table in there. There's a giant Mentos stuffy in there, and the only thing that you wouldn't find in your average living room is there's a small car in there, a Volkswagen.
I mean, of course, it's a Volkswagen, but of course, it's sports in Europe. There has to be a car somewhere, right?
Right, and that's
the only thing they should have done differently is it should have been a Skoda
or a Vauxhall, one of the two.
Because this must be a weird Canadian thing. but because of the World Hockey Championships and World Junior Hockey Championships and all that sort of stuff over the years, that we are aware of these European European car brands that probably the rest of the world has no fucking clue exist.
Well, the best part was, remember the one time they had the Worlds? It was in Quebec City a few years ago.
Yeah.
And center ice was a Skoda logo, and they had a Skoda in the corner. I'm thinking they would have, like, the cost of shipping a Skoda across the ocean to sit in the stands, like, you couldn't just fake it. You couldn't just throw some badges on something. No, they went full send on that. So this is one of those things, and I will give you full credit for saying it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what should be on DAZN when it's not NFL season.
Yes. And even when it is NFL season, just have it there all the time.
Right. Because I feel like we as a society need to embrace more random sports watching, such as when you and I watched the Youth Olympics and that curling broadcaster, best thing ever, right? Could you imagine, same situation, few beers deep, sitting on the couch, flipping through the zone, seeing things like handball or the World Balloon Championships? Like, I would actually pay after the NFL season is over for DAZN for the full year if I could randomly stumble into sports like that.
Yeah, and, like, to be clear, like, this is not a joke to the people competing in this. Like, these, if you watch the video, it's about a minute long, and the sort of the hits they take, well, not the hits they take, but the hits on the balloon and the plays they make on this balloon are pretty crazy, and the car tends to eventually become sort of the focal point of every sort of set. I don't know exactly what they're called. It feels like it's probably
it's
a set.
European.
Like,
it feels like it should be a set.
It feels like tennis terminology seems fitting here. I don't know. Regardless, I've also just noticed, too, because I have it up on my screen now and it's paused, I missed in the bottom corner initially the giant roll of Mentos. This is there.
I told you, it's just like a couch. Like,
well, the couch has a logo on it, too, so this is actually like an incredible TV sport in terms of, like, advertising opportunity, because it looks like everything in this room is basically product placement. It's better than curling for advertising on TV. It's literally just there, but it's a part of the game.
Yeah, it's and you can jump on it. See, I'm still trying to, and you know what? They got to get better on their search engine optimization, because I have now dug into the world of World Hot Air Balloon Championship, which seems way more boring than this exciting game. I mean, it's the same thing. Netflix did it with Floor is Lava, but they made it so over the top and dramatic and painful and edited.
Well, it's like Holy Moly. Have you ever watched Holy Moly?
I haven't watched Holy Moly.
So I had heard decent things about it, and then I read a piece by Spencer Hall back when they were still Banner Society. They used to send out this email every week about the top whatever. They still do it on their paid subscription thing. I'm just not in on that yet. And he had a little bit on Holy Moly, and then he actually talked, because Joe Tessitore is like the play-by-play guy for it with Rob Riggle.
Yep.
And they steal the whole show. Like, it is just, he is perfect for it, because the guy understands and can be funny, and let's just say he didn't get a fair run on Monday Night Football because the NFL holds the cards so close on everything.
Right.
But in college, he's perfect, and on Holy Moly, he's perfect. And it's dumb mini golf to the extreme, and it's just a joy to watch. It's basically the same kind of thing.
I love it. Did you know this was the first ever Balloon World Cup?
Really? I did not.
And Peru won. Peru beat the Germans, which the Volkswagen was probably very disappointed.
Must have been.
Yeah. It even made the BBC.
Wow.
Look at, like, they got a golden balloon trophy. Francesco de la Cruz is the first champion. Like, that's a name that's on brand for this program.
Francesco
de la Cruz. Or I feel like it'd be more of a Francesco de la Cruz, like, championship fighter.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm jacked to the tits now.
Anyway, we're very proud of you, Francisco. We always believed in you.
We did. Unless you could be replaced by Sergio, then we're all on team Sergio.
Clearly, Sergio would be very good at balloon. There's no question about it, because the man's good at everything he does.
He's got kids. He's charming. Motivational speaker. I feel like Sergio could kick it farther and higher than anybody, and then do something with it. Like, I just feel like he'd, like, motivational speak you, so you'd, like, give up to Sergio, because Sergio's the man.
Mm-hmm. You could say the balloon has kind of hit the ground for the Saskatchewan Roughriders recently.
I was waiting for it. I could hear the gears turning in your head, and I knew solid gold was coming. Yes, the balloon has hit the ground. Shit has hit the fan. It is time to hit the giant red panic button. I was actually
We're going to get into that.
disappointed.
Yes, we are going to get into that. We're kind of going to do like a state of the team, I guess you could say right now. There's about 5 games left in the regular season and all that. And, of course, potential playoffs. And then we'll kind of look ahead to, kind of where this team needs to go in terms of just everything. And then that'll lead us into sort of the other big news, and I guess the big news in the CFL right now, because after sort of another whatever weekend, Trevor Harris was put on the trading block, and surprisingly, not even just because for a variety of reasons, but because it's hard to trade in the CFL, especially when teams know you want to trade someone, was actually traded.
Yeah, that never happens. Usually
No.
people just have to wait till they let him go, they release him, which I kind of thought was the end game on this, that, they obviously wanted to hit their 85% vaccination threshold, and they just let Trevor Harris go. But you're right. It was a shocker. I don't know if him and the team parting ways was such a shocker as soon as they sat him down for that game. But, to say it was football-related reasons, that's bullshit. That is so bullshit. It is comical.
Yeah, if you want a great rundown on Brock Sutherland's entire availability after the trade, head down to 3downnation.com right now. JC Abbott wrote up a great little piece on it, including lots of quotes from Brock Sutherland, and basically shoots down most of what he had to say. So.
Right, because it was all just such forced, contrived BS. Now, the rumors are out there, and you can kind of see them bubbling below the surface on Twitter, that nobody's got a firm enough source to come out and say it, but it seems like it was dressing room problems. It seems like, and I've made lots of jokes about Trevor Harris not being vaccinated because, from what we know, he's not, and he's hinted as much with his posts and his Instagram and stuff like that. So, but
we don't know for sure. To be
no,
clear.
we don't know for sure. That's the thing. I'm making these jokes, and I want to be clear that I don't know. I'm not a dunk bomb here. I'm not an insider by any stretch of the imagination, nor do I pretend to play one on TV. But I did find it interesting watching Edmonton play the Blue Bombers, a total meaningless game for the Elks, and really a meaningful game for the Blue Bombers, a chance to clinch a playoff spot. And with him on the sidelines, that whole team played more inspired football than I think I've seen out of them the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't start an XFL quarterback, I think they probably beat Winnipeg there. So it's just, I always find it curious when you hear these rumors about a guy being, a bad teammate, bad in the room, so on and so forth. And the other thing I found interesting too was how hard the home broadcasters were pushing that, no, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. Totally great guy. Like Ryan Rishaug on the broadcast to a degree. Some of the tweets you saw from the Edmonton media folk talking about, oh, he stayed late. He helped Cornelius get ready for the start. It just seemed like they were really trying to correct the narrative, which all led me to the surprise that he was traded and they got something for him.
Yeah, so I don't know much there's left to say on that, but we will get back to it again, I guess. But as usual, before we get into all of that, for the Pile O'Bones Brewing Company, John, what is in the glass this week?
In the glass, I was hoping to make it on my way home from work to try some face melt. Is that it from Pile O'Bones?
Yes,
is that
the face melter, yes.
The face melter. Unfortunately, I didn't. I was going to ask you if you had tried it. I figured you had. Thankfully, I did have some cold Space Cadet sitting in my fridge for tonight. So going with a sponsor beer tonight, the Space Cadet IPA, a nice fall beer here, as I tend to find myself, although I love the white IPA, I find myself moving to less fruity, less hoppy, blasty kind of beers. Space Cadet is a perfect fall IPA, although I really want to try Face Melter, and hopefully I have time to make it to the liquor store tomorrow on my way home from work.
Yeah, Face Melter, definitely not an entry-level sour, but I know you're sort of above that level. It's not one of those lightly soured, fruity ones. It's very tart, especially at first, but...
Ooh, fantastic.
Yes.
That does sound like right up my right up my sleeve.
Yeah, it's the kind of sour I really like too. Now I'm kind of over the whole fruited sour thing. But
right.
Yeah, very good, very delicious. For me, I've also kind of gone a little darker, as it tis the season, I guess you could say. For me, sort of one of the original dark beers of the province, probably one of the original beers that really got me into really getting into craft beer, locally especially. That would be the Nokomis Brown Ale. Dark, roasty, toasty. Some would argue more of a porter or a stout than a brown ale, but delicious nonetheless, no matter what you want to call it.
Yeah, can't go wrong. Although it doesn't sound as much up my alley, but if that's your kind of jam, yeah, my kind of jam this time of year is going to be the Red Ale Space Cadet, although I am very much going to try to have my face melted off.
That's always a good thing to do as well, I guess.
Yeah, got to mix it up.
So yeah, the Riders. We're coming off a bye. Yeah, we're coming off a bye week, John. Obviously, I don't know if you actually ended up watching any of that game last week. I guess it doesn't really matter at this point.
Solid chunk, actually. I did. I did manage to catch chunks of the game, and I remember texting you about it. But then I also got pretty drunk for the rest of the weekend. Sister's wedding and all.
Yeah, because if you listened to the episode last week with Dan Plaster, sort of. The felt like, cause go back a couple weeks first with the first game against Calgary, the way that game went, I felt optimistic after it. I was like, okay, they were the better team for 45, 50 minutes than Calgary. It just didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
This time against Calgary, they were not the better team for most of the game. Maybe on par at times, but for the most part, they were not the better team. And I know you're ready to hit the panic button. I don't know if I'm quite ready to be there in terms of straight up hitting the panic button, but it's definitely within reach, and it's definitely tempting. And sort of for me, and I know there's a lot of question marks about this team. Everyone's written a ton about it. The offensive line is bad, and we can talk about that. The offensive line's bad. The play calling's been uninspired. But ultimately, football is a quarterback-driven sport.
Yes.
And this isn't a conversation that has been had greatly in this province a whole lot yet. As far as I can tell, granted, I work all day, so I don't get really a chance to listen to the local sports talk radio much anymore, so maybe it's gone on there. So to Derek Taylor and Jamie Nye, sorry if this conversation has gone on your show and I missed it.
I don't think it has. I catch bits and pieces, and especially the social media feel, but I don't think they've had this conversation in depth yet.
Okay. Because we all, let's be clear, as a human being, as a person, we all love Cody Fajardo.
Love the guy to death. Yes, and he might be one of the most likable athletes this province has seen in a very long time. Yeah,
and I was one of the guys that was early on the train. If you remember, before in the 2019 season, John was not afraid to keep bringing up the fact that I called he's going to be a starter, even though I said I think he would play a significant role in that team at some point, given how he played in preseason.
Right.
That said, for as good as his 2019 was, it was good within context of what that season was for quarterbacks across the CFL. And I think we've both been fairly clear in our thoughts about that, saying in a normal year where every quarterback plays at least 15 games, he probably finishes maybe third at best in passing yards.
Right.
So he was never a guy that was going to light up the league. He was never going to throw for 5,000 yards, though I'm starting to wonder if anyone in the CFL will ever do that ever again. But that's fair. That's a different discussion for a different day. One we've kind of already had, actually. But so the expectations for him coming to the season were high. And certainly after it, a year off didn't help him, to be fair. Yeah. But I think it's fair to say at this point that Cody Fajardo has not met those expectations. I would agree, yeah. And my expectations were maybe a little lower than some. Not like that I expect him to bottom out and be terrible or anything, but I thought, okay, he is what he is. He's not a guy that's going to light the world on fire, but he's going to bring passion. He's going to be, he's going to lay it out there on the line every game, and he's going to do everything he can to help them win football games, and he is still one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And a lot of that is still true, but there's a certain level of play that hasn't quite been there. And in fairness, it's basically been there hasn't been there all year for basically every quarterback in this league not named Zach Collaros either.
That's you are not wrong there. Everybody has struggled with the full year off, and I think maybe that's too why we've kind of given Cody a bit of a pass, and he's genuinely not one of those guys you want to step up and criticize because he's just so damn likable.
And to be clear, he's not the only, he's far down the list of the issues this team is facing, but it's still an important conversation to have, I think, because no matter where this goes for this franchise going forward, every team is only as good as their quarterback. And we've seen that here with this team before in the Chris Jones era, where they didn't really have a quarterback, and as elite and as insane as that defense was, they basically got nothing for it because they didn't really have a quarterback.
Right. Now, and I'm not placing the blame solely on Cody. No. I mean, I do think he doesn't look like the same guy we saw in 2019 for, a variety of reasons. He got banged around early. I wouldn't be surprised with the kind of guy he is if when he was running a lot early on and getting hit hard, if he didn't nick something up a little bit there, and maybe that's been part of the problem. I think the other biggest problem has been the offensive line. If you're not really paying attention, if you're just kind of watching the game, they're not giving up a pile of sacks. This doesn't look like BC last year with their comically bad line, but they're not doing enough. You can tell almost every single one of Cody's balls is rushed, especially with him not really running the way he was to start the season. Teams are starting to pin their ears back and go after him a little. He might not be getting hit, but I think that's more based on the CFL rules than anything, that he's not getting that extra half second, that extra second he needs to maybe go through one more read, maybe go through one more progression, maybe step into throws a little bit more. Now, the line is going to be bad. They seem to be getting worse as the year goes on. And maybe Cody's got to adapt. Maybe Jason Maas has to adapt. Maybe that's part of the reason you see so many damn hitch screens. But he's going to be the focal point for the casual observer as to why the team is struggling, because he is not playing as well as he was before. And I don't think it's entirely his fault, but he does have to bear some of the responsibility.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And you can't change the past at this point. But this is a really key stretch for the team, not only for the team, but for him as well now.
Yes.
Because, and I maybe nothing comes of it. Maybe he plays well and everything's fine, honky-dory, whatever. But I would argue that this is a very important 5-game stretch the rest of this regular season for Cody Fajardo. The team is in a rough spot right now. It's, kind of at the low point of the season. But in the CFL, until you're officially eliminated, you're never really out of it, because it's all about getting hot at the right time. So if they're able to turn the corner and win football games, they still control their own destiny, they'll be okay. And that starts with your leaders, and that starts with, your top players making sure you get out of the funk and get it going. And this is the point of the year where I think your top paid player has to drag you out of this. And then in football, that's always the quarterback, because it is, the most important position on the field. And those guys get paid top dollar for a reason. And that's not to say that they are in the spot because of Cody Fajardo, but ultimately, quarterbacks can help you get out of bad situations, and that's what they need out of him. And so if over the next 5 games, Cody's able to take his play up to another level again and lead them to at least hold on to second place, whether they win a Grey Cup, it's inconsequential, really. The playoffs are a coin toss, blah, 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 blah. But if they go down swinging and they play their best football down the stretch, then it's like, okay, he figured it out. He took the blow from the league and bounced back from, them adjusting to him, then he adjusted back. So now we're at that phase right now where it's like, okay, Cody's kind of at that fork in the road. We're kind of see, before his injury, Vernon Adams Jr. was kind of in the same spot. Where's it going to go? Is he going to readjust and take his game to another level? Or does he plateau, or worse?
Now, see, this is why I want to hit the panic button, because I don't know if I tweeted it or I texted it to. No, I tweeted it because I jokingly said, and I hope this is a Fraser curse. I hope for our listeners that love this team, and I hope for, Cody and some really likable pieces of that team that I'm Fraser cursing them. I see this team going 1-4. I don't think that. I think Cody is what Cody is going to be because of the pieces around him. I think that offensive line is nowhere near good enough. I don't know if Jason Maas has the ability to maybe work in some more bootlegs, some kind of rollout stuff, a little bit more play action, things to buy Cody more time. He has seemed reluctant to do that, and that leads me back to the fact that maybe Cody's hiding some sort of injury from all those hits he took, right? He doesn't look right. He's not the Moss game plan early on is completely different than what it is now. Like now it's looking very George Cortez-esque with all sorts of underneath stuff back in the Tino Sinceri days. And I legitimately think, I was praising Edmonton a little bit ago, and I think they lose in Calgary. I do. I think this is 0-3 against Calgary, which now would vault Calgary into second place. Calgary's got the free bingo space in Ottawa the week after that. Well, Saskatchewan now has to play a Montreal team that's in it. They play the Elks, who, as I went on earlier before, are looking inspired. I think they split with the Elks, and I don't know if they beat the Hamilton Tiger Cats, because I think that last week, while Calgary's probably playing a Winnipeg team that's basically the Bombers' practice roster, Saskatchewan's got to play a Hamilton team that, to me, is going to be fighting for a home playoff game themselves, right? So I think it's going to get bad, and the only thing that might save them is the stretch that BC is coming up against here. BC goes, where do they go this week? They go at Winnipeg, at Toronto, at Hamilton, home to Calgary, which would essentially be Calgary's chance to lock it up, and then home to BC in the last week of the season. So BC also has a tough schedule. Saskatchewan has a tough schedule, but I just see Calgary has come on here, and the Riders are what we think they are. They are not a good offensive team. Looks as though Calgary made them bleed their own blood, and now teams know how to beat them. So I hope this is a Fraser curse moment, but I really see a 1-4 stretch coming up here. I only got them winning 1 at home against the Elks.
I mean, I don't know if I'm willing to go that far just yet, but I mean, we've reached the point where it's definitely not out of the realm of the possibility. I don't think, to use a Scott Moe phrase, everything's on the table. And yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say at this point, because I think this thing really can go either way right now.
Yeah.
And what is going to come of this will be very important for this franchise, I think, going forward. I think to a degree, this is sort of one of those weird years where maybe you throw some things out because it's a bit of a strange year and you're just kind of getting back into it and the whole thing.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't also, fully take it that way. You do have to prepare for that. Perhaps this is what the team is completely, and adjust accordingly next year. Now, despite all of this, despite everything we said, I don't think it's at a point in a scenario where you say, okay, say hypothetically they do go 1-4 down the stretch, like you're saying, John.
Yeah.
And Cody doesn't play as well as he could. I don't think either of us are saying you release him and don't bring him to camp next year.
Oh God, no.
But I think it does lead to questions about what you do with him long term and what sort of the idea is behind him, because it's okay. Is Isaac Harker really the real deal, or do they need to come in and maybe bring someone in or have someone better maybe ready internally, and maybe that's Paxton Lynch, maybe that's whoever, I don't know, that really pushes him, because you need to be ready in case what we've seen from Cody Fajardo was the plateau, and to see if maybe there's something a little better available. Right.
And I think it goes back again to the weirdness of this football season, and B, to a degree, and we've hammered on them a lot, I think it's the offensive line. Like you got to think, like, outside of Dan Clark, they're essentially using option B, if not C, at every single position on the O-line right now. So
that's entirely fair, but I think we both know, like, these sort of elite levels of quarterbacking are able to overcome that to a degree. You're not going to go on and win, 100 games and be, you're not going to win every game and be, champions like that.
Right.
But you still see more out of quarterbacks who are running for their lives every day, who are, like, really good still. You still get more out of them.
But that's the difference between $500,000 for Cody Fajardo and $1 million from Michael Riley, Bo Levi Mitchell right now, right? Like, that's the way I see it. You could put Bo Levi Mitchell behind this O-line that the Riders have. You could put Michael Riley behind this O-line that the Riders have and spend that extra $500,000, and you would get that kind of performance. Cody's the guy that needs the team. And I'll say the same thing about Zach Collaros. Yeah. I'll say the exact same thing about Zach Collaros. As a Bomber fan, I like Zach Collaros. I like what he's brought for that team. But Zach Collaros, I think if you put Cody Fajardo in Winnipeg and Zach Collaros in Saskatchewan, I think both teams are having the exact same season they are right now.
That's probably a fair assessment. Yeah. Well, I mean, that offensive line is still probably the best in the league, so.
Well, and that's it. Like, I think, to me, like, the Riders have made their choice to not get one of those hyper elite guys that can be that guy no matter what. The Riders are going to play ball this season, next season, maybe into the future, with the Cody Fajardo, Zach Collaros, Matt Nichols of the world, right? And to do that, you know, if that's what you're going to be, if that's what you've accepted to be, you have to give those guys the help, and Cody hasn't had that. I would still like to see them maybe bring in, if you can afford to fix the O-line, because let's face it, this season, the Riders want to do well. They want to win every single season. Next season is the year they're building for. It's almost a little bit like junior hockey that, okay, we want to be good this season. We want to be great next season when, you know, they have the Grey Cup at home. The Riders want to be in that game. We want them in that game. Everybody in the province wants them in that game. It just makes it such a buzz, right? So if that's the direction they're going to go, you know, they're going to spend over the cap. We know that. I'd like to see them maybe bring in some veteran help for Cody long term. That O-line has got to be fixed. Like, if you got to release a receiver or two here, like, if you got to say goodbye to a couple receivers, I hate to say it, but that O-line has got to be fixed, because to me, that is where all of this team's problems come from offensively. The defense is fine, but it's just teams have their number, and they're bringing heat, and they're bringing a lot of it, and they can't adjust, and it's screwing everything up. Because same thing, you can't get William Powell running the ball because guys are in his face within 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, despite everything we've said and we've talked about, the offensive line has remained the issue, and it continues to be an issue. I guess sort of the silver lining from it is, generally speaking, they've gone with sort of the younger, and at least they've gone Canadian on the offensive line. So
yeah,
if you're going to suck at a spot, suck at it with Canadians at least, so there's something to it. Maybe you're building something. And
some room to grow.
Yeah, there's room to grow, and we think a guy like Logan Ferland's still going to grow into his spot. And, you know,
I
next
think
year
Brett Boyko will adapt eventually.
He might be what he is. I don't know what's the point about him.
You think so?
He wasn't good in BC either, man. It's been like 2 years since he's back from the NFL.
You're not wrong there. I just think he's such a. He's, again, I'm skewed by my honest evaluation of him because he is such a well-liked and respected guy, especially in this city, like especially in football communities. Everybody loves the guy for all he's done to give back and what he was when he played, right? So he's another guy that my perception of might be screwed. Maybe it's just me saying, much like Cody, I hope he's better than what he's shown this year, but I don't know. It's hard to separate heart and brain sometimes, especially when you've had like 8 concussions like me.
Yeah, and so I think, you know, number one, the hope is that Brendan Labatt does decide to return to football next year. That would make a big difference.
Yeah.
And maybe you get lucky and a Dakota Shepley is cut from the NFL again and comes back.
Right.
That's the easiest way out of this. Whether that happens or not will be yet to be seen. Because
let's face it.
Because I talked about this with Plaster last week was, you know, when a team is struggling, you know, with the receivers having been great, so they added Duke Williams. You know, if your defensive line is struggling, you go out there and you get a D tackle, you get this or that. Through the course of a year when your offensive line is struggling, it is damn near impossible to bring in someone and improve the line
really
overnight.
is.
It just doesn't happen that way. So once you've picked your line, you pretty much have to go with it. And so this is why they're stuck with who they have at this point.
Well, and the thing is, too, is there's 2 names you just mentioned that I think they expected to have this year.
Well, at least one of them. I don't know if they expected Shepley. Like, I honestly thought he was going to make the Niners after he literally played on the roster. He wasn't just on the PR for part of the year. Like, he actually played meaningful NFL games for them. So I thought, okay, he's probably going to be on the Niners again this year. Then he got cut, and I was like, huh? And then he signed with Seattle, and he's been with them ever since. So.
Right. But like leaving, you know, and again, with the bizarro lost season that was in the CFL, I think, you know, coming into the next Rider season, if everything had been normal, you were fully expecting, you know, the heart of that offensive line to be Labatt, Clark, Shepley, and then you're working in, you know, a Logan Ferland or something like that. So, you know, getting one of those guys back would be huge, would help in the future. But for now, it is time to panic. The sky is falling. Mash that bright red panic button. It is not going to be fine, Saskatchewan. Everything's going to hell. And I really hope I just Fraser curse them, because I don't know if I can beat up on them for 5 games.
Hey, Jacques Cartier. Show's over.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.